Thank you very much, everybody in GICEA, Mr. Patel for welcoming me, and Girish for giving such a warm introduction, which takes away from the official introductions, but very nicely done. Thank you very much, Girish. Makes me feel part of everything. We are in an era of very fast change. Change is going to be continuous, increasing, more disruptive, more problematic as the years go on. If in the 20th century we were searching for certainty, in the 21st century we will have to accept uncertainty and find ways of living with a degree of equanimity, peace, happiness, even within this idea of uncertainty. The 20th century devoted itself to finding ways of defining a problem, studying the various aspects, analyzing the problem, and solving the problem in a linear fashion. But in the process, we created more problems. Every time we solved something, the side effects were worse than what we thought. We improved modes of transportation, and the effect on everything, on cities, on the environment, on health, every single aspect you look at, the effect was disastrous. So that in the 21st century, we will have to realize that problem solving in a linear fashion is itself a problem. The 20th century based itself on the idea of mastery over nature based on scientific knowledge. We no longer have the same confidence. We cannot say that we will be able to master nature. Every disaster points in another direction and shows that when we were trying to master, that itself has doubled back with double the force on itself. So the 21st century will require a different kind of mind and a different kind of profession. The 21st century is the century where the graph of change maybe multiplies in a geometric progression every day, every month, every year, in such a manner that if we try to define and understand a problem, by that time the circumstances of the problem itself have changed. We will not be able to keep pace. So therefore we need a new orientation, a new mode of thinking, a new mode of acting. The 20th century had what is called the action bias. There's a field called behavioral economics which has coined this term, action bias. Action bias is that you say, is there a problem there? Okay, take action, solve it. And every time you take action, something more happens, and something more happens, and something. So there is our natural response faced with a problem is to act. And there is a suggestion in behavioral economics that maybe not acting not doing is as important as doing. In recent days, there was an article about plastic waste. And this author said all the efforts which are being done to solve the plastics problem, they are reaching nowhere because the production of plastic still goes on. And he says that not to make plastic, not to pack things in little packets of plastic, not to create more and more consumption and demand for consumption is the only solution, not the technological solution of how to recycle. Recycling does something like 5% of the problem, not more than that. So we are going to have a different outlook towards what we see in front of us. So first of all, we will have to understand what is happening. What is the nature of change that is going on? 3 areas we could look at. What are the changes to nature? Because that's the base. That is our fundament. That is our resource. What is the change to nature? Which in turn asks us, what are the changes that as a result happen to society and to technology? These 3 are interconnected and they cannot be seen separately. But at least for understanding, we will have to take them one by one. We cannot simultaneously speak of all 3. So I'm going to talk about the kind of change that is in the area of nature, in the area of society, and area of technology, before I go to thinking about, wondering what could be the kind of changes to our professional lives. Remember, we are members of what is called the noble profession. We pride ourselves on being morally responsible for what happens to the world. Whether we are engineers, architects, planners, we all believe that our knowledge is the base from which we can make a better world. We could say that with confidence some years ago, or maybe a few decades ago, or perhaps half a century ago. But since 1950, increasingly, we have shown ourselves to be not capable of dealing with the needs that occur in the built environment. We may make buildings which are safe, but in the process, we are using sand, we are using steel, then what happens to the world? So the interconnectedness of problems, which we each learned in our various compartments, engineers to ensure the physical safety of buildings, architects to ensure the qualitative aspect of buildings, planners to assure the organization of the tasks in such a way that space and time and material were all used effectively. All 3 in their compartments and with their peculiar orientations failed to solve the crisis of the built environment. And this is something which requires us to now reflect where to go. So let's look at nature. What's happening to nature? We are getting increasing weather events. Excessive rainfall, lack of rainfall, which we are threatened with now, flooding, droughts, water shortages. and coming very fast on the horizon, climate change, where cities will be underwater, and some cities won't have any water. And what are we going to do with that? So there is one whole area in which nature is challenging us. It is the area of safety and security. The area which says we know how to make safe environments. That is being challenged by the disasters of nature, by all these things. Our recent 2 cyclones, one cyclone, the other one we escaped. Gujarat escaped. Orissa could not escape. That is showing us something going wrong. Then our intense pressure on resources, water, all materials, energy, and space. All of these are under intense pressure because of the demands of human beings, which may or may not be proportionate to their needs. That our demands may have become excessive. We have habituated ourselves perhaps to ways of life which make deserts out of productive lands, which make the whole world a kind of arena of destruction. So there is access to vital resources. Nature is challenging us on that now. There is a scarcity of space. There is a depletion of species. And it's not just that we won't be able to see giraffes anymore. Every species has a contribution to the cycle of life. And without the bacteria in our gut, we could not be alive. Bacteria control most of our bodily functions, and they are hugely contributory to our well-being. As much as there are some other bacteria but they are able to fight inside. So the depletion of species and at the same time the aggressive growth of invasive species which cannot be controlled is connected to pressures on everything and the pollution of air, land and water. And this is where nature is challenging health. When I was a student, there were scientists who were claiming that we are close to finding the secret to everlasting life. This was the kind of thing which was coming in Scientific American and all that. Today, no scientist talks about that. With having realized that you cannot fool around with nature to that extent. So that's one whole series of changes which affects our built environments. I'm sorry, I don't want to make you unhappy, but I can see on faces the kind of, they didn't expect this kind of a lecture. Maybe they expected a very hopeful lecture. Hope will come some point in time. Because we are not, the next to next lecture is about ક્રોધ અને હતાશા કેવી રીતે જતી કરવી. તો આપણે હતાશામાંથી તો બહાર આવશું. પણ તે પહેલા વસ્તુ સમજવાની જરૂર છે. We really need to understand this fully. Society. What's happening to society? First, there is the increasing gap between the haves and the have-nots. 1%, almost all over the world, 1% of the population owns 70% of the resources. And the rest, 99%, have to do with less than 30%. In most cases, less than 30%. Which means, in the built environment, it means more and more slums. Even those which are built by government will become slums immediately. because that gap has been widened so badly. Along with that is economic uncertainty. We are not sure what will happen tomorrow, let alone 5 years from now, let alone 20 years from now. We cannot say what the oil price will become tomorrow. If the Iran war starts, then what will Iraq? No, Iran right now is in the crosshairs. Yeah? So you have that. You have identity conflicts combined with global unification. Across the globe, there is a culture of being the same as everybody else, which is moving. Everybody wears jeans, everybody sings certain things, everybody listens to certain kind of music, everybody does the same things. And at the same time, we want to identify ourselves in a very narrow fashion. This is every problem has two sides to it. It's simultaneous, which means in terms of the built environment, the increase in ghettos all over the world. This is a phenomenon which is happening. And it is something that we have to become very aware of. Then the next is the instability of lives. Our great-grandfathers would not have moved away from their great-grandfather's place. We started moving. In the 20th century we moved. And now we cannot stand. We have to keep on moving. And this global nomadism, everybody is moving around here, there. Today I read that the tourism statistics for this year are the highest up to now. So not only for tourism but for work, migration of populations, migrations of young people here and there, nobody stands still. And along with that, money also flies. There's capital flight from this country to that country, that's the new country, that's the next place to grab. And there's capital flight. This results in place instability. We could say at a certain time that so and so city had a certain character, so and so city had a certain quality. It could be famous for that. Today, that is no longer the case. GICEA Penda is available everywhere. So Rajkot has no claim. Ahmedabad has no claim. Though, of course, we tend to still hold on to it. But now that phenomenon of the very specificity of the Ahmedabadi, of that wonderfully institutionally generous and personally stingy person who was the Ahmedabadi, who lived a life of extreme simplicity in his personal and was hugely generous at the institutional level. Where is that Ahmedabadi? So, the place character or the place stability is gone. Giganticism and anonymity that comes with it. We used to know everybody in our neighborhood. Now we know few people, and as the cities grow, everybody becomes a dangerous stranger. To the extent that we will bash up unknown people without any reason, provided we suspect them of something, so that the very quality of city life as a wonderful release from the restrictions of the village and a place where you would find lots of people whom you never knew otherwise, that is now turned into the dangerous place where there are strangers and I only associate with those of my identity. And our cities are shaking on this ground. So giganticism, anonymity, and scalelessness. I can see that some young people are already quite upset with this. It's good. Most importantly, ourselves, our families, our neighborhoods, all of these are undergoing huge change. Time is changing. We don't have time anymore, and every second counts. Where few hours were of no meaning. I was very happy that this meeting, which was supposed to start at 6:30, we were coolly sitting there till 7 o'clock. No problem, good. But time has become like a master of our destiny. Space is not available. Places are disappearing. Therefore, our whole self has no content, and we become anomic in the Marxian sense. And anomy comes in, no name. And in this information overloaded time, competition, faceless competition. Competition used to be of the type when we could say that, oh yes, I know Gunjaria does that kind of drawing, but I can do something else. It was a face-to-face competition which remained within human limits. The competition now is faceless. Although there is Facebook, maybe because of Facebook. So that's the kind of social change which makes us different, our families different, our children different, our neighborhood different, our entire way of thinking about society different. Of course, technology has a major part to play. We need not talk about all the kinds of things that have happened in technology. They are immense. We've got medicines which save lives. We've got so many things. But at the same time, we also, the problem with technology is the lag between the emergence of the technology and the capacity of a society to digest it. That a society has to improve or has to evolve its ethical values to go with the technology. If I can take videos anytime, anywhere, without your knowing, well, that has not happened. Now, few days ago, there was this thing about, what is it, fake, they can take any movie and change the face of the person. And so they can make Trump say things which somebody else was saying, or, and then they can create almost real sounding. There are now programs which allow you to do that, and the Russians are evolving those. And they become freely available. And if I'm being videographed for doing this lecture, the same video can have, say, Imran's photo, and Imran is saying that. And he doesn't want to say this, but he was meant to say that. So we will have all these fakeries which will go. But those are still. So the main problem is we are unable to create the legal and the moral and the ethical standards which keep pace with technology. Technology is moving at 100 times our rate, and we cannot keep pace in changing our ways of dealing with it. That is the biggest problem. In that now, in our work, with the emergence of artificial intelligence, it may be that we may not have any need of human beings for doing most of the tasks. Like already in the homes, they tell Alexa to do this and Alexa to do that, or these little machines with which you can run the house. Now it will happen more, and there will be no work for us. They might still pay us just to keep us happy. But without work, it's the devil's playground. And the devil is already making appearances quite visible. So how do we create the conditions for integrating artificial intelligence into the way in which we conduct life? This is one huge problem on which very little thought has been given. And in the professions of architecture, engineering, planning, this will become a major issue that we will have to take into account. And it's a massive problem, it's not a small problem. So that's one in technology. Along with that is the emergence of machine-distorted reality. That we no longer have direct contact with many of the things which we... Like, NK used to walk around in the streets and find out what's happening before starting to make a plan when he was with Auda. But now there will be all kind of surveillance machines from which he can get videos. He will not need to move out of his office. Slowly, more and more disconnected from the touch, the smell, the feel of actual living reality. And he may make mistakes because of that. And this is something which is also in our professions very important. Many of the engineers who start using STAD, and the younger ones particularly, create problems rather than solving them. So it is all these technologies which are emerging. How are we going to deal with them? Our sense of reality is therefore weakened. How are we going to deal with that? How are we going to educate children? How are we going to educate professionals to remain connected with reality? That is actually the major... I'm a teacher. So my major questions are about what to do so that the young people do not get disconnected. Because they are going to be doing things very soon. And with the rise in technology, with the rise of artificial materials and artificial environments, health issues are going to increase exponentially. So this is the paradigm in which the 21st century person will have to work. Nobody, at least not so small a person as me, can give the answers. No person, single person can give answers. The answer will be evolved, or the answers will be evolved societally by our actions. And so I have a few pointers of what might be a good way of trying to approach this problem. So I go back to what I said at the beginning, that we were called ourselves professionals because we could guarantee the validity of our works. We could say, I'm an architect, I've got a registration, or I'm an engineer, I've done my B.Tech or M.Tech, therefore I know and I can sign the drawing. We used to pride ourselves on that. No longer. We could help to maintain and sustain life of humans and the environment. Now it looks like every time we do something, some problem we are making for something else. Here I dig a hole and there is a problem. Here I use something and there is a problem. Every material that we use now, irrespective of what materials we use, somewhere it is having an impact, and as more and more of this is done, it becomes a bigger problem. We could promise better conditions. Now, we cannot promise anything. I mean, honestly, if you look at it, we have to admit that I cannot promise that what I design will be better than what you have. So what to do? So the first thing I think is that instead of mastery over nature, mastery over circumstances, mastery over technology, mastery over social forms, we will have to think about participation in nature, in social forms, in technologies. Participation means what? When we participate, what happens? Suppose we are in a group together and we are having, deciding what to eat for dinner. I say something, somebody else responds, no, that's not good. And third person says, it's not allowed in my diet, I'm a diabetic. Somebody else says something, and we keep on talking. There is no one final decision which everybody has to accept or reject. And I think this process, how do we make professions which are able to be truly participatory? This is one major question, and not based on the idea of mastery. Right now, we are constructing selves. Like if my carpenter tells me that, Sahib, aa to barabar nathi. So I could tell him, look, I am the architect, I made the drawing, you make it. That's mastery. But if I say, hey, કેમ એમ કહો છો? સાહેબ આમાં આવું છે. હા, એ વાત સાચી. થોડું વિચારવું પડશે. તમને શું લાગે? આમાં કંઈક થાય? કે સાહેબ મારું માનું તો આમ કરો. એ નથી ગમતું. આગળ વિચારતી. એમ કરતા કરતા something will emerge out of a participatory thing in which we will have to keep aside this professional prestige and the gradation top to bottom, because we may learn from a bar bender, we may learn from somebody who brings water to the site. Anything is possible, because the situation is so grave that we can no longer sit on that high horse and order people around, because we create more problems. So that's the first thing. This kind of a practice of participation requires feedback loops. If you see a plant growing, they've given me a plant and I'll go and put it in my plot, it will grow. Now it's growing up, there's another tree there, and the branches of that tree, this plant will automatically bend a little and come out growing in its own way. So there is a feedback loop. The plant is genetically programmed to grow upwards towards the light. But it is also genetically programmed with other responses. It says, if you find some big solid thing blocking your light, move. And nature works through the feedback loop. And the feedback loop is something which our profession doesn't have, or our professions don't have. And we have to find ways of integrating the feedback loop into our systems. Therefore, we will not design products. બનાવીને આપી દીધું, લ્યો, જે કરવો તે કરો, મેં તો કર્યું. એવું નહીં. We will have to design processes as much as products. How to live in that house, how to modify that house, how to bring in more light, how to do this, how to create. And the house design itself will have to become a responsive, almost half-complete design. That the idea that we make perfected and completed products which nobody should change, which Palladio had. You add anything. Alberti said what? You add anything or you subtract anything and the unity of the object is gone. That will no longer be our credo. Our credo will have to be, this is a growing, learning device. And it will change. So we will have to create responsive systems in physical forms, but also in education. That we have to create responsive learning processes, which I'll come to in a while. Which means we today consider B Art Maligaru, okay, done. Become an architect. B Tech, fine, valid as an engineer. M Tech, fine, can sign structural drawings, right? According to AMC, something like that. That we consider that you take a body and you fill it up and you train the body with certain habits, and the moment it is ready and पक्का हो गया, उसको बाहर निकालो, वो जाके कुछ भी कर सकता है. That process will have to change, and we will no longer create finished, complete professionals, but we will have to create continuously learning individuals who learn from every dhakka that life gives them, who are able, who have the resilience not to get shattered. Oh, school માં તો મને આવું શીખડાવ્યું નહોતું, હવે શું કરું? ચાલો કઈ નહીં, આપણે ચીટિંગ કરવાનો થઈ જશે. એ નહીં. So you have to create individuals resilient enough to be able to respond and learn from the harshest circumstances. Therefore, we will have to something here. Technology. We will have to learn. Very subjective. They don't like what I'm saying. I still have to say it. The machines are very intelligent. Now they've got artificial intelligence inside them. They can sense what I'm saying. And they are ready to get back at me. So you'll have to learn not to teach, but to teach, learning to learn. Not create those who have learned everything, but to create those who are capable of learning from every experience, from every bit of knowledge, information that comes. And we will have to create organizations that are learning. It is called a dual loop thinking in management terms. There is a whole theory of this, by the way. It says that if you have an office, it lays down its practices. Through every job, there should be a feedback loop which comes back and tells, see, this didn't work, and in 3 jobs we have seen it doesn't work, we should change. We should change. And the feedback loop, both for individuals and for organizations, so they are called learning organizations. That means the organizational itself is learning from everything that happens to it. These are the most creative forms of management that we can think of. And this is something which we will have to have. We will have to learn that all problems are interconnected. If I'm thinking about water supply in a house, rain is connected to it, the river is connected to it, the sea is connected to it, bacteria are connected to it, everything is connected to it. And I will have to learn how to balance out all these interconnected things, and therefore I will have to learn across the disciplines. I will not remain in my discipline, but I will have to know and be interested in other disciplines, especially the humanities. Because the anthropologists and the sociologists and the political scientists, they're thinking a lot of what happens to society with technology. And we have to talk to them to find out. For example, suppose we gave pipe water supply all over the country. What will be the effect on the environment? I'm not saying that people should not get water. I'm only saying be aware of all the connections and then do it. So we will have to be transdisciplinary. We can't remain within disciplines. We will have to learn to value processes rather than products. That means we'll never be able to show in magazines. That's why I don't show anything of my work nowadays. we don't show what we made. We only talk about what were the thoughts that go on. Because that is what we can share. You can make your buildings in your own way. They will look different, they'll be different, that's fine. But we have to share our knowledges in a way in which we are talking about processes rather than products. Products we will make. I mean, that is our joy. And that we do out of sheer, animal instinct. But we also need to share products or processes. Next, we have to learn to devise open-ended systems, not controlled solutions. Banaras, the Ghats were an open-ended system. The king from every part of India came and built. Indorwala built some ghat, somebody else built some ghat, only thing that was known was that this river floods and we need to have ways of going down when the water is low and protect the buildings when the water is high. And we can make it a sacred thing. These three conditions were there. And it became one of the most creative solutions to what a river and a city can connect as. But there was no final solution. Nobody had a drawing. There was one drawing with which this riverfront was made. One drawing, one section. And that is heedlessly and without any doubt at all applied across kilometers, as if the land behind was the same. And that is the hubris, the great arrogance of the technocentric mind, that the solution once given will never fail. They are digging up CG Road now. That was the solution at one time. It's now the problem. And it's worth thinking about this. We Ahmedabadis, we used to be distrustful of solutions. રણછોડ રેડિયો શું કરવાનું? છેલ્લે પછી મિલ બનાવી 3 વખત બિચારાએ દિવાળું કાઢ્યું, પણ એટલે એ એક જાતનું જે અટ્ટહાસ્ય થતું હતું એ જરૂરી હતું, જે આપણે ભૂલી ગયા. આપણે દરેક વસ્તુ સ્વાહા, બહુ સરસ, ઉત્તમ. We have to be a little careful about this. Then balance the action bias. Sometimes we have to act. Suppose there is an event of plague or of some Nipah virus or something, we have to act fast and get rid of it. But all the time, don't suffer from the action bias. Also balance it with a sensibility for restraint, holding back. Not doing may be as important as doing. I think that's a golden sentence which could be written everywhere. Value both the old and the new, because the old ideas sometimes have wisdom in them. Look at it. Today they are having a water crisis. And we used to have an advertising agency in Ahmedabad, which when there was no advertisement, they would write, "Pani ghee ni jem vaparu." That was in our system. So the old has also some values. Value the new, no doubt. Good phone, good communication, good. But value also the old. Don't throw it out. And I think that is another lesson we have to learn. And last, and which should feel like music to an Ahmedabadi's ear, use little less or as little as possible of everything. If there is one child, divide it into 3. Because we value every resource that nature gave to us. Not because we are conjures, but because we are aware. And this idea of using less which was propounded by all the Ahmadis, adopted by Gandhi, promoted by Gandhi, needs to come back. And it is a sickening thing for somebody who has lived in Ahmedabad for so many years to see the amount of waste of material, of resources, of money that's going on all around this town, which never was a showing off town. It was a town in which you restrained yourself. You did not try to show yourself as richer than क्या प्रवीण ने तो શું બતાવી દીધું હમણાં એવું હતું જ નહીં. ગમે એટલો શેઠિયો હો, ગમે એટલો નાનો માણસ, બંનેનું સરખું, કપડા બેય સરખા. If we go into that, then we are going to change the profession, not into a profession which is only following what is happening, but is leading into areas in which we had never gone. And it is the leadership of such people, of thinking people, and our pride as professionals should be the pride of leading new models of thought, new models of action, which are kind to the earth, creating happiness between all of us, and creating a sense of a well-ordered, yet free and creative existence. The professions that sit here all have this capacity, provided we think about it. Thank you very much.
He has touched so many aspects of life. I think you must be having some questions. We start with Girish bhai. You have a question. You were adding something here. Should. Good start. Questions, please. Here. Thank you.
I think you are
One
explaining a very sort of picture of future,
Yes.
very pessimistic, and I don't agree. We are all full of capacities. I mean, there is no this sorry picture which you are expressing as a pessimistic view of future. I think people are developing. I'm here, I'm managing projects all over, and that is possible. Even though I was doing a small thing, that doesn't mean I am not aware of more. I don't agree with you.
I think that is perfectly good that we don't agree. The pessimism is for the present, not for the future. It is these young people who are going to make a future, and if they are aware of the possible rise of problems, then there will be an absolutely optimistic future. And I have been all the time in contact with people whose eyes are bright, whose faces are shining, and who are full of optimism. But they need to know, and they need to be tough. And I think this is a pessimism about the present, not about the future. However, we are perfectly within our space to disagree as well. That's why.
The younger generation is far more efficient and far more clear.
So like you talked about maybe 20th century, there were so many positive things. And then when we come to 21st century, there are many problems created by human beings. Can we have about maybe a couple of things which are very positive in the current century?
Yes. But first I'll tell you that 20th century is not as positive as you think. There were 2 world wars. There were 6 million killed in Germany. Our own partition claimed the lives of millions. And therefore, the 20th century cannot be considered a century of positivity. I think that should be known. The century of productivity, yes, but not the century of pleasant things. Now, in today's time, what are the good things? Wonderful good things. First of all, awareness. It's increasing every minute. That people, I remember when I was a student, if somebody talked about what was happening in Jharkhand, or in that time there was no Jharkhand, in Madhya Pradesh, or somewhere deep in Bihar, I would say, come on here, let me concentrate on I want to design a good building. Today, I am finding students are thinking about all those interconnections. That's the most positive thing. Second positive thing is that we have begun to talk to each other. Not communication, listening to each other. Even though now we shout at each other quite a lot and we refuse to listen, but amongst the younger people, amongst the more quieter people, there is an increased ability to listen. My own son stops me at times and says, come on, you're only listening to one side of the story. I don't agree with that fellow, but you have to listen to him. Because I'm living in this world. So I want to listen to all the voices. That is another very positive thing, which is very dangerous for the superstructure of power, which wants only one kind of voice. Whether it is the corporate powers or who want you all to buy Colgate and Colgate only, or the political powers. The demand for a single voice is something which is the danger opposite it. But there is a great deal of listening. That's the second very positive thing. The third positive thing is the fact that people are willing to change their lives. Today, in my student days, the moment you graduated, you took a job or you started something, you settled down, got married, and got into your life. There was only one path. Today, somebody who has qualified as an engineer will say, no, I want to look at, I know somebody, for example, who studied, he studied digital sciences and became an expert programmer, and he came back from his studies in Sweden perhaps, and he got into Bangalore. Somewhere along the line, 2-3 months down the line, he decided, maza nahi aata hai. So he is now making the best bread in Bangalore, and he has a shop which sells its products before even he opens it. And he is having a very good life. So he decided something else. So that openness of mind that the younger person has is something which is the third very, very positive thing. I could list many others. If I had an hour to think about it, I took 4 hours to work out this thing, I could list them. It is not that there is nothing positive, but I think we have to open the lens a little bit, and we have to change the non-beaten track. This is something which I think the professions especially are loath to do. Council of Architecture says this is architecture and nothing else. We will not consider it. And I think that's the worst thing. Fortunately, the engineers don't have such a strong body or a statutory body. The planners have a body, but which is made of people, not of laws. And so they are in a better situation. But the architects are under this vice-like grip of being professionals, like Superman. And I think that is something. Therefore, when I speak to the professionals, sir, I have to speak in a certain way.
If I was speaking to my younger comrades, of which there are so many here, my tone would be because I have to drill into the mind of the Khadar Pidhar professional. Sorry to say that. રીઢો થઈ ગયો છે મારો આર્કિટેક્ટ રીઢો થઈ ગયો છે અને રીઢા મગજમાં ઘૂસવું એટલે લોડાના ચણા છે.
I'd like to know your thoughts, particularly urbanization is inevitable. So, what should be present or near future context? What should be the approach? Cities growing and growing. The migration from rural area got bread and butter, and it creates. So, what is your thought for urbanization?
Yeah. Well, urbanization is a process which is ongoing. I think first of all the concentration on the largest cities may have to change, and we may have to think about the second tier, third tier, fourth tier towns and improve the life there so that we don't get huge conurbations which become difficult to administer, manage, provide with resources, etc. But distribute. I call this distributed urbanism. If you look at a Google image of Tamil Nadu, between Chidambaram and Trichy, there are 100 small, maybe 200 smaller villages or urban conurbations. But there is an engineering college within 5-kilometer distance anywhere. There is a school within half a kilometer distance anywhere. There is a good health center run by the government within a kilometer's distance anywhere. And so it has all the benefits of urban life while agriculture carries on in between. And it is a very interesting model of urbanism, which I think urbanism need not mean unalloyed concentration, because it may help us to resolve issues of, for example, wastewater, which could fertilize the farm. It could also create different varieties of trade. For example, if you look at many of the conurbations, they consist of small places. One where brass work is very good, one where woodwork is good, something like that. And in this small area, I find Tamil Nadu, that part of Tamil Nadu, extremely instructive. So I think scaled up, that might lead to towns which are of maybe about some smaller size, but many, which would then allow food production and would allow the reuse of wastes and would allow a kind of a life cycle, because with our communications technology, it is not necessary for everyone to move. It is possible also to work from home. And for example, one of my clients here in Ahmedabad, she has another office in Bangalore. And she decided that the whole thing was becoming so difficult. She runs an IT firm. So in Bangalore, she changed the rules of the office. She said, look, I'll pay for internet connection to anybody's house. Let us not have an office. That office is doing the same amount of work as the Ahmedabad office is doing, where 50 people are going to her office on SG Highway from all over Ahmedabad. Whereas in Bangalore, Ahmedabad has a slightly better condition that we can go. But there, it takes 2 hours and it costs so much money. So she changed the entire method of working. These are the kind of innovations through which so as I said, we'll have to think about the processes of urbanism as much as the products of the infrastructure of urbanism of the provisions for supply of goods and food and all of that fuel. But we will also have to think about the processes. And the processes, I think there are lots of new thoughts which are going on in the world of management, in the world of business, in the world of government, which I think the planning thinkers would benefit from thinking in that way. That's my view. I'm not a planner, but sorry, I'm taking the liberty of going ahead with that. Like a normal citizen, I'm giving my views, and not as an architect.
Sir, my audible? Sir, my question is exactly related to what you are going to conclude just now. That just now we are in the 4G era, 5G is the doorstop and go on. So because of such type of fast communicating data transferring technology, ultimately it will lead to decrease the urbanization, and it will more reserving our rural life or everything. So whether it's a new technology, latest technology, but ultimately it will be helpful to save our nature and our healthy life. What do you think about it?
See, in 1990s, a professor at Harvard wrote a book called City of Bits. Bits is the digital media term. Bit, 1 bit is 1 bit of information. And at that time he raised the question whether we will need cities anymore, because it will be possible to live anywhere in the world. And of course we know of Frank Lloyd Wright's plan for every person getting 1 acre of land and whole of America being just one settlement, including farming, including all the things that. But this did not happen. What he was thinking in 90s, even when communication became so easy, and in other countries the speed of internet is far higher than ours, and it's easily accessible. Even then, this did not happen. Why? Because the human animal likes to see other human beings. And there is some recent research in neuroscience which shows that our perceptual equipment is built by seeing others. The baby sees the mother, etc., etc. So they've come to the extent that we see all objects also as like human beings or as animals. We used to laugh when Doshi drew, when he was designing something, he would draw a dog's head and say, "Jo putra ju lage chhe ke nahi." He said, "Shun baat karo છો સાહેબ, કઈ સમજ પડે, કઈક તો સીધી વાત કરો." But that is the development of perceptual capacities based on seeing other bodies. And this is an inherent need of human beings. So, in spite of the fact that you can work, you will still go out to an adda, you will go out and have tea somewhere, coffee shops will increase, all those things. So it comes back to the same thing. You want to see new people all the time. So, while there are opportunities in communications, we cannot do away with the city. I think both of these will continue to exist. The nature of the city will have to be thought. That is, we used to have a city with one center. Vadra Square, એટલે અમદાવાદ. પછી એમાંથી ગાંધી રોડ નીકળે ને એમાંથી બધું થાય એક જ. Now we will have cities which have so many centers. And how do we run cities like that? N-case problem. And we will have to think about that as well. Outside has tried its means of doing that.
As a concerned citizen, you shared your thoughts, views, and on reality we have to consider about the population explosion. And we have to also think that shall we wait till for the situation decay and regeneration? Because what we are talking about, the housing needs, new materials, technology. I see the future with the peripheral and maybe some level precast, prefab, houses, shelters made from the plastics. Even as of today, if you see any shacks or jhoppadis, their roof is with the, instead of tarpaulin, plastic sheets, and they protect themselves from the natural hazards. At this situation, what we should do and how we should deal with such situation, because certain things has going to be happen. It is a need based, time based,
Obviously,
speed all.
obviously I cannot have an answer, but one can certainly discuss this. First of all, it often arises in my mind that if prefabrication and pre-casting and prefabrication were the real answers, why have the builders not taken it up? Because they are the cleverest of us. They have more intelligence. They have at risk crores of rupees. So that means they would have thought that ये करना चाहिए. ये आंसर है. नहीं किया. क्यों नहीं किया? I think there is something to be learned. Prefabrication and precasting is used only for the poor. Why? That also should be a question that arises. Huh? I think, first of all, housing is something that happens by people's activity and is not something which is given to them. If we start from that premise, then we will get another. You know what they did in the Scandinavian countries? When they made the town plan, they made serviced plots sold only to individuals, small plots, and they could build their own houses within the legal framework. And this was one sort of thing which Charles Correa proposed for Mumbai, was not followed, because it will take away the power of those who control the idea of the house. The politician loses a constituency and the builder loses a client. And housing which arises from suo motu, as they call it in legal terms, સ્વેચ્છાથી બને એવું ક્યાંય કોઈ એની વાત નહીં કરે. હું આપીશ એવું કહેશે. મને આટલા આપો અથવા મને 2 વોટ આપો તો હું આપીશ. પછી હું શું આપીશ એની કોઈ વાત નથી કરતો. અને આ એક બહુ જ મહત્વનું, એટલે આપણે હું જે આ વાત કરું છું એમાં ફંડામેન્ટલ થિંકિંગની જરૂર છે. 65 batch, 69 batch, and to us this new world was about prefabrication. We have to grow out of it. Population is not a problem. They now talk about the what dividend is it called? Demographic dividend. We have lots of young people. काम करने को तैयार है. इससे अच्छा क्या हो सकता है? चाइना में सब मर गए. अरे क्या बात कर रहे हो? In our time, they used to talk about population problem. To the extent that Sanjay Gandhi went and did forced sterilizations. In China, they did. And they said only one child.
now they are saying, no, please have 3 children at least. We'll give you compensation for that. Because they've seen that the demographics has changed in a way in which it creates problems for the economy. So I think the definition of problems is something which is to somebody's benefit. And to see through that whole game is the work of the professional. Not to accept at face value the kind of promises or the kind of theoretical molds that are given by that, by the corporate world and by the political world, which are now one and the same. They are no longer different. Whole world economy is being controlled. And governments are simply instruments with which that it can happen. This is not a criticism, it is simply a fact. And we as the people who can understand and think about it deeply should not be afraid to ask that question and should spread the word. Because after all, this is a democracy. And the opinion of everyone is what makes the new society. And if I am in my classroom, I must talk about this, even though this is considered politics and not architecture. Girish?